Alright, so we're going to continue Hilchos Mikvaot Siman Reish Aleph. We covered already Sif Aleph in Beis. Today we'll do Gimel, Dalet, and Heil, hopefully, B'ezrat Hashem. Basically, we know by now that what's needed for Tahara, whether it's for Niddah or for other Tmeim, we're not going into right now into Metzora and the like, we need a mikveh or a mayon. That's all we know right now. We're not dealing with mayim chayim, which is another type of water that is a prerequisite in some situations. Mayim chayim is not something that we need to contend with today, but we do need to know or to be familiar with the difference between a mayon and a mikveh, because there's still somewhat of a difference between the two. A mikveh is standing water, a mayon is flowing water from a spring. Basic difference is that a mayon, mi'ikar din, is metar bezoichlin, even though the waters are running, flowing, and it's also metar bechol shehu, even if it's just a little bit. Obviously for a man, it would have to completely cover him, but there's no real requirement of a certain amount. So a mayon does have an advantage over a mikveh. Mikveh meaning that the waters need to be be'ashboiren, they have to be standing water. And the requirement for a mikveh is 40 sel. And as far as requirements, as far as dimensions, we've already covered in the last year. Where do we exactly learn them from? All we know by now is that, at the very least, a mikveh should be amo al amo berum gimel amos. It should be those dimensions of an amo squared by the height of gimel amos, which is the cubic, I guess, equivalent of 200 gallons, using gallons. And of course, if you have more, it's even better. But that should be pretty much the minimum. The question is whether that's a requirement midoraisa or midorabbanan, and a lot of that, of course, will make a difference in the following seifim, whether this whole halacha is midorabbanan or midoraisa. Or what is midorabbanan and what is midoraisa exactly. And there's various machlokes in them which we've covered already. Even the gabi mayon, because even though a mayon may be sufficient, the chol shehu, that could be the gabi kelim. But the gabi a man who is much bigger than a kelim, most kelim, maybe the requirement by a man would be, even in a mayon, 40 saw. So that depends on how you hold. We have a machlokes, Rambam, the Ravid hold, that even though a mayon is entire adam bechol shehu, that's only if kol gufoy, if the whole body is miskase b'mayim b'asachas, it would have to be that the waters cover him up at once, entirely. Whereas the Balatoises holds that for tvilas adam, a mayon is not metar bechol shehu, and you need bimseo. We saw that the Beis Yosef brings down in the name of the Raj, but the one should be machmir, be'isur koros, to require 40 sel. And that's how the Shuchan Aruch paskins. So the question as far as the 40 sel, if it's doraisa or derabbanan, it's a machlokes. Some say that the 40 sel itself is midoraisa, and some say, like the Rosh, that it's midrabanan. We went on to see the difference in nahares, in rivers, where sometimes the rivers can be used, and sometimes there could be achshash, there could be some concern about their use. Because it all depends on how much rainwater fell on the rivers. Because with rivers, even though they come from a certain source, at certain times and certain seasons, they do get mixed with noitfim, with rainwaters. So then, if that's the case, then they would not be metar bezoichlin, only be'ashborin, they would only be metar if they're sitting. And you would have to somehow create a body of water, or somehow enclose a certain section of the river to make it into a mikveh. So you shouldn't have the problem of a mikveh which is running water. Because imagine a mikveh that is leaking, it would not be good. A mikveh cannot be metar b'zoicha, it has to be only b'eshbarim. If you have a real mayan, then that would be okay. And tonight, what we'll do is go into a little bit of a very, very relevant halacha that covers quite a bit of hilchos mikvois, and that is about mayim she'uvim. Waters that have been drawn, waters that are not necessarily naturally found anywhere or do not naturally come down from Shamayim, but they're called mayim she'uvim, drawn waters. For example, somebody bringing in water with a bucket drawn from a well, or filling up a bucket from the faucet. Now we're getting into the real details of how to make a mikveh, not just in the amount, the minimum required amount, but also what renders the mikveh kosher, what kinds of water will render the mikveh kosher, and what could happen to disqualify this mikveh. What can go wrong in such a mikveh? Or what do you do b'chlal if you don't have enough rainwater? Is there any way that you can complete the minimum required amount? Alright, so in the Torah's Kohanim we learn like this. It says, by mikveh mayim yiyeh tahor. So okay, there has to be a certain amount of water to make the individual tahor. Well, I would think that is possible, or it is feasible, even though he took water and somehow filled up the mikveh by drawing it or by bringing it on his shoulder. And there you can have a mikveh, and it would be lechatchila perfectly fine. So we learn now from the pasuk there, Talmud Lemar, it says mayon. We see elsewhere it says mayon. So just like a mayon, a spring, is bidei shamayim, it happens in the hands of shamayim. Af mikveh bidei shamayim. So does a mikveh have to come about bidei shamayim? Okay, it seems simple. But there's a machlokes rishonim. If this drasha is a complete drasha, and a mikveh that all of it or most of it is shov, is therefore drawn, is posel min Torah, or is that pasuk just an asmachta? Asmachta meaning, you know what, we can somehow relate to that concept by using this pasuk as a basis for what we're trying to say. It's not that it's a halacha is really inferred from that, it's not explicit in that, but it's just an asmachta. So something that gives us some guidelines, perhaps, something that we can base our opinion on. And the shahiva of mayim, in other words, the concept of mayim shuvim would in fact only be a derabanan. So the machlokes is as follows. The this is a Toysus in Psochim, holds, and I think also the Ri Migash was the other opinion, as well as the Rambam and the Rashba, that even if it's kuloi shov, even if it's all drawn, the psul is only a psul derabanan. Very important that we know that a good number of Rishonim hold that mayim she'uvim is possible, but it's possible derabanan. Now, you may ask, what's the difference between if something is possible derabanan deraisa? Well, what comes to mind when you think about that? In having learned Melicha, Basar, and Taaruvot, we've seen this a lot of times. When something is a derabanan or deraisa, it can make a world of a difference if there is a suffix. Just a suffix alone. So it's important to know that there is quite a few Rishonim that hold that mayim she'uvim, waters that were drawn, that were not naturally there or did not come there naturally, but were brought there by human intervention, is only also derabanan. And what's the gzeira? Why would the Rabbanah say it's possible? The psul of mayim she'uvim, Toysus brings down elsewhere, is because of a gzeira shemo yitbol bekelim. As we will see later on, the mechaber, you cannot immerse yourself in a keli, like in something that was built, that is not attached to the ground, that is like a vessel. like a portable tub, call it that. Why? Because Tvilas Kelim is psula min Torah, because Bo'inan, we require that it should be dumya de mayan, it should be similar to a mayan. In what sense? In that important detail that the water is in the karka, in the ground. So how the water got there is not as important, but that it's in the ground. That is important. So far, according to those who hold it's a Rabbanan, it's a gzera. You can't be toivel in a kevi. And we're choishes, if we allow mayim she'uvim, you may come to go to mikveh in a tub. Man-made tub, portable tub.
The mikvaot we use today,
right,
are basically built-in tubs. They're built into the ground.
Yeah, but they're not
there's
tubs.
No difference. You could take the same item, put it above ground, or put it below.
Well, very good point. What you're saying is, what if it appears like a tub and it's attached to the ground? Well, as long as it was made into the ground, not that it was manufactured, made, and then attached to the ground. That would be the big difference. So what you're seeing today is a mikveh being fashioned into the ground. We're laying the tiles, we're laying the cement, we're making it part of the... That's completely okay.
What makes such a mikveh actually okay and confirm with these rules,
yes.
I think we'll need to look into more detail in that, because there are certain things that are done in a mikveh that's unlike a bathtub, which make it kosher. The same mikveh, as far as the little swimming pool that we have is concerned, could just as well be non-kosher.
As far as the what?
As far as the place where people actually go into the water,
yes.
It could just as well be non-kosher. You can't really tell by looking at it from the outside whether it's kosher or not. There are certain details involved.
Oh, sure. First of all, you need somebody that is very qualified, and knows how to make a mikveh to be involved in the making of a mikveh, because a lot of things can render it not kosher, especially when we're dealing with the tubes. The tubing is important. And we're going to be talking about hashaka. Hashaka is when you connect the bore, the pit, to the mikveh where we immerse. We're not immersing, whether you're a man or a woman, in the actual rainwater.
Right.
Most of the time when we immerse, it's in a mikveh that is connected through a certain hole, which has to be a certain diameter, which brings about hashaka.
We'll still have all the...
And we'll still talk about that.
You'll see the difference between the bathtub and this thing.
Sure.
Just from looking at it from the outside, you might not be able to tell.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll be talking about different concepts, one of them being hashaka, what makes a mikveh kosher and what not, and a very interesting concept of how you can actually take mayim she'uvim and make them kosher, even though they once upon a time were she'uvim. And we'll get to that soon. But right now, just this idea of the Rabbanan, the Oraisa, Machlokes, Rishonim, and we see several of them holding that the whole concept of mayim she'uvim is the Rabbanan. However, the Gzera is there because we're choshesh that a person may be toivel in a keli, and that we know is min Torah, because it has to resemble a mayim in that the water is connected to the karka, to the ground. Then we have the shita of the Rashbam, Rabbeinu Tam. It's most mashma like that from Rashi, that it would not be only possible if it's mayim she'uvim, but it's possible in the Torah, as long as it's kuloi shov. So everybody agrees. Mayim she'uvim is no good. The question is it in a Torah or not? Now here, we have Rishonim that say kuloi shov.
What does it mean?
If it's all. So what we understand from that is that if roiv of the water was not shov, a little bit more than 20 se'ah, right? 40 se'ah is the amount that's required. A little more than 20 se'ah is kosher, but the rest does not have to be, natural water. It could be mayim she'uvim, min Torah, except that midrabanan, of course, we require everything to be, for the entire 40 se'ah to be kosher. Once you have, by the way, 40 se'ah of kosher mayim, non-she'uvim water, then you can add 1,000 gallons of she'uvim, and it will be fine. That's where hashakol comes in. Yeah, that would not disqualify the mikveh, even though you're adding so much more. Remember with the rivers, we have this concern about more noitfin. Here, once you have your 40, you've guaranteed your 40 and they're kosher, then you don't have any other concerns. So we have so far two groups of Rishonim, some that hold that Maim She'uvim is the Rabbanan, and some that hold that if it's Kulei Shov, then Minatorah it's possible. So what is the Gemara saying that it's only Midrabanan? Gemara is the one that says it's Midrabanan. So he says like this, that the Kavanah there is when there's a mikveh that most of the water is Eino Shov. So the meaning over there is most of the water is not Shov, then the remaining water is pretty much batal. Okay, so that's been a Torah. So Midrabanan, it would be a necessity to have the entire mikveh kosher. In other words, with the Raisa, it would be fine if you had the majority of it. But it's only with the Rabbanah that you need all 40 saw to be kosher. Then we have the Ramban in the Ran, and also they bring it down b'Shem Arvaidad, that Maim She'uvim Eno Posum Min HaTorah Elo Midrabanan is dafka when it's not nishav al yedei ma'aseh odom. In other words, when it was not drawn by a human intervention. Dafka shelo nishav al yedei ma'aseh odom. For example, there was a keli that got filled up. A keli got filled up, but there was no human intervention. If there was human intervention in bringing the water to the mikveh, then they would agree that that would be possible in the Torah. So this is a third opinion. And they call it tfisas yad odom. I call it human intervention in English. Maybe there's another way of describing it. So if a human was involved, then it's possible in the Torah. But if it was shoved through some other way, through a keli, then that would only be midrabanan. Then we have the Shita of the Ran, b'Shem Arash. And he makes an interesting distinction between mayim that were drawn with a keli that is mekabel tuma versus a keli that is not mekabel tuma. If the keli is a mekabel tuma keli, it can become tama, then it's possible in the Torah, because you need that the formation or the building of the mikveh should be through tahara. Like we learned by the din of mechatas. Even though the Rambam, I think, says that only applies to mechatas, but nonetheless, that's what they would hold. That since it needs to resemble the halacha of mechatas, in other words, it has to be formed, the tahara, it would have to therefore have happened or have been drawn through kelim that are not mekabel tuba. So Maim She'uvim with kelim that are not mekabel tuba, like for example earthen kelim and so forth, similar, stone, earth, that they're not mekabel tuba, it would not render these waters posul min HaTorah. That's pretty much the machlokes. So let's see the mechaber inside, Sif Gimel. Aboim so, she'omru, that which we said that we require 40 se'ah, sorry shelo yu she'uvim, it's important that we not make the mikveh from waters that were drawn, she'im heim she'uvim psulim, because if they are drawn then they're pasul. So that's clear. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Maim she'uvim would be pasul. So the Ramah adds, "V'im kol ha-mikveh hi she'uvim," if the whole mikveh is of drawn water, pasul min HaTorah. So he brings down, he holds that if the whole mikveh is maim she'uvim, it's pasul min HaTorah. Therefore, usfeiko lechumra, if there's any safek legabe, if the entire mikveh is of maim she'uvim or not, it's lechumra. אבל אם רוב המקווה kosher, if the majority of the mikveh is kosher, והמועט הוא שאובים, and the minority, the lesser amount is shov, אינו אלו מדרבנן. That's only מדרבנן. You still can't do it, but ספיקו לכולו. If you have a suffix, since the majority of the mikveh is kosher, then a sfeika, in this case, a suffix, the rest, would be a suffix lekula. So far, so good. Now, the Mechaber didn't say anything about that. So you wonder how he holds. All he says is, what about if it's only the majority? So the Shach over here brings down, based on the Mechaber later on in Sif Nun Gimel, that it's mashma from him that he holds that Kula Shov is only possible with the Rabbanan. Just interesting why he wouldn't differentiate here, but the Shach says, based on what he says later on, it's mashma that that's how he would hold, that Kula Shov is only with the Rabbanan. There's also another minor difference, legabe, which water was there first. And we'll talk a little bit about it another time. If the shov water was there first versus the non-shov water was there first. And how much of the non-shov water was there first, that would complicate matters. According to Rabbeinu Tam, Gimel Lugin of Mayim Shuvin Betchila is possible d'oraisa. If you have 3 lugin, amount of water that's shov, but they're there in the very beginning, it's already possible d'oraisa no matter how much water, kosher water, you put later on. The Ran says afilu revi'is. The question is, what's called betchila? Does tchila mean that it's dry and they are the only ones there? So according to the Goy's Ashri, I saw, as long as you don't have roiv b'mikveh, it's called betchila. According to others, as long as there's no revi'is, according to the Marik, if you kol she'in gimel lugim, mikra betchila. If there's no 3 lugim, it's already called betchila. Okay. This could make a little bit of a difference, because it would depend how the waters got there. As we will see, there are places where there is no rain, and sometimes you have to use snow. You have to you bring up the snow in trucks. Mm-hmm. So some of these concepts of tchila, what's there betchila, what's there in the beginning, what's there at the very start, when you're making the mikveh, can make a difference. What kind of water is going in there first? Because we know that at some point later on, you can introduce Mayim She'uvim. But does that mean that I can first start off with Mayim She'uvim and delta it up? No, it's not so simple. There is a certain importance to how you start the mikveh. And all we need to know for now is that we better have, at the very least right now, the majority of the mikveh kosher to begin with. As far as the rice, the Rabbanan, we're going to need the entire 40 saw to be not Mayim Shuvim.
Does that also on the Hafila, or is that only as a final result?
No, that's only as a Lechatchila.
So as a Lechatchila we need 40 saw of
yes, because we're going to soon see, what happens if there is a suffix? What happens because sometimes there's a goy that cleans up the place, as we're going to see in the next seifim. He could have taken out some of the water, he wants to clean up the mikveh, he wants to add water. There's a suffix whether there was enough kosher water to begin with. That's where this comes to play. Whether we can rely on him, that's going to be one issue that we're going to soon see. And as far as, can we say Safed Rabbanan Lekula here?
Well, it seems to me that that's a different question. My question was actually, we were talking about, in the beginning you need to have, you can't have a certain amount of non-kosher water in the beginning,
Right.
So when you mentioned the 40 Sa'ad Rabbanan, I was just wondering whether the 40 Sa'ad Rabbanan is also the rule or law. Or is the 40 Sa'ad Rabbanan just now in general that ultimately at the end you need to have 40 Sa'ad?
No, the Chatchila meaning that's what's required. The question,
but not the Hafila meaning.
But once you know you had at the very least, 21, a little bit more than 20 sa'ah of kosher water, then there's a suffix legabe the rest. So that's a b'di'evet. That's what I mean by the b'di'evet.
But as far as starting to fill up the bore,
Right.
So would the Rabbanan require you to have 40 sa before you start putting in Maim She'uvin when you're starting to fill up? Or do we only have those humors that you mentioned before with respect to how much a revi is or this or that of Maim She'uvin in the beginning of filling up the bore would already render the whole mikvah unkosher? Answer my question? You mentioned first she thought
right. Yeah, exactly. That's if that disqualifies.
Is 40 sa also one of the quantities that you need to have 40 sa kosher water to begin with before you even add Maim She'uvin? Or
yes, that's what we do today. That's correct. We need to have 40 sa. That's the
would render it non-kosher if you didn't.
It all depends how it happened. If you learn the Mishnah and Mikvaot, you may recall that one went in, one went out. Do you recall that concept of notav se'ah and brought in a new se'ah? It all depends how much you had and how much fell in. If you have 3 lugim of Maim She'uvin falling in to a mikveh that is missing 3 lugim, it's possible.
Missing in terms of to
arrive at the 40.
And that's the Rabbanan.
Yeah, well, based on it depends how you hold, whether the 40 se'ah is the Rabbanan or the Oraisa. But that 3 lugim would disqualify the mikveh according to the halacha today, if they fell in together at once and completed the 40 se'ah.
Okay, so now you're not completing the 40 se'ah, you're starting off.
Right.
So you're starting off, and you don't have 40 se'ah of...
That's a different halacha, a different concept.
That's what we're holding, right, though?
No, we were
just discussing the...
I threw that in.
Oh.
Not that it's very much relevant here, but there is such a concept that if you started off with a certain amount, you may be in trouble. Because how you begin the mikveh is also important.
Right,
Yeah, that's all. We didn't get too much into it because that's not what's being discussed here. But it's an interesting idea.
It's not, it applies to many things in life.
It does?
Yeah, how you start off can have a great impact on what happens later.
Yeah.
A good percentage of psychology is based on the presumption that whatever a child experiences in this...
In the beginning, sure. Okay, another concept that we will be talking quite a bit about is hamshocha. Hamshocha is not hashaka. Hashaka is when we're connecting the 2 mikvoos to each other, and we are going to be metaher through the Megashom in the rainwater. We're going to be metaher the Maim She'uvin by connecting them through a certain size hole. That's called hashaka, like they're kissing. But there's something called hamshocha. Hamshocha is a very unique idea where you have waters that are dripping down or coming down by hamshocha.
From a lion, right?
No. They're being dragged along the floor, the ground.
The rain, for instance, right?
Well, no. Not even rainwater. You had a bucket, and which is Maim She'uvin, and several feet away, you threw them down onto the ground. And from the ground, they went down all the way to the mikveh. In other words, you did not take Maim She'uvin and pour them directly into the mikveh, but you did something called hamshocha.
Right, but
you dragged it along. Somehow the waters got dragged along. This could happen from the roof too.
Does it matter how they got into the bucket?
No.
So you could fill up the bucket from the faucet?
Yes. But it doesn't mean you can always do hamshocha. I'm introducing the concept now of what hamshocha is and how sometimes it is acceptable. Sometimes, in quotes. It is an acceptable medium through which we allow Maim She'uvin to enter the mikveh. Even though we don't have 40 se'ah yet. Remember, once you have 40 se'ah, it doesn't make a difference, all these things.
When the water is hamshocha is flowing underground.
Right.
Does it change its status?
Yes.
She'uvin.
Apparently, yes.
How far does it have to be underground? Because it was
not underground.
No,
on the ground.
No, distance.
A little bit of a distance. We'll get to it.
Because if that's the case,
right.
You build the nice mikveh in the ground.
Right.
Okay. And then you turn on the faucet somewhere and let it flow along the ground until it fills it. And you can have start out with all she'uvin, And you kasher the whole thing.
Well, you can't. I remember. I did not say you can start off with all she'uvim derech
No. If it's on shachar.
No. That's yeah. Very good. But what I did not say is, can you do the whole mikveh by shachar? That I did not say.
So what,
right?
Why not?
Well,
If it changes its
let's see what Hamshachar accomplishes.
It doesn't require when it changes its legal status.
Right.
When it changes its legal status,
It changes to what? That's the question. What is its new legal status?
that's
Right.
different. I don't.
But very good point, and I'll tell you why it's not so simple. Because in the mikveh, we need two things. We need megashamim, with non-she'uvim water. But we also needed that it should be done b'dei shamayim. There's a certain criteria in the building of a mikveh that it happens about b'dei shamayim, like a mayim.
So that would be natural.
Natural, yes, yeah. So somehow this concept of Hamshachar can take care of one aspect.
Which one?
It can somehow transform the Neisha'uvim to non-Neisha'uvim. But
Okay, it's not B'dei Shamayim.
that's not B'dei Shamayim, exactly. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. I thought it was just interesting to mention it here because it's going to somehow be related to the next halacha. So Sif Dalet. Sif Dalet talks about a mikveh shehi shel oivei kochovim u'mikabel mimeno sechar. It belongs to a goy. He gets paid for it. Rent, whatever, to take care of it. Ein lehamin le'oivei kochovim olav. You cannot trust the goy as to the origin of the water. Elim kein yesh l'mikveh chof alef so. Elim kein yesh tomid. Unless you know for sure there's always, or there has been, always 21 se'ah kosher. So what's exactly going on over here? There's a possibility that the goy may make the mikveh pasul. That's what we're talking about here. So this halacha is taken from the Chuvas Aruch. That there's a problem first of all with nemanos here, with the goy. We're talking about a mikveh that does not have mem se'ah, maim ksherim. And the Shach here elaborates a little bit more that this problem, this isser, is only when a goy possibly benefits from his involvement here. What does it mean he benefits? If the waters are dirty, he may lose his business. And he would have a benefit or he would have an interest in cleaning the water, right? So he may take out the dirty water and add water of his own. So that's the kind of a situation that we're talking about here, when a goy has hano. Because to suspect that he would ruin your mikveh just for some odd reason, we don't suspect. So that's important. We don't suspect a goy that he would ruin a mikveh. But if there is some interest of his there, then of course it's possible. Or he might use it for his own personal need, to take it home, some of the water he needs for himself, for his own bath at home. In those days where they didn't have plumbing. In other words, when that is a possibility, that is when we can suspect him, that he maybe filled it up with maim she'uvim. Otherwise, we don't suspect a goy that he wants to be machshel, the Yisrael, intentionally. As we see in Siman Kuf Yud Ches, also with the halachas there about meat that was left behind. We haven't learned those halachas yet, but maybe we'll get to them one time. When a goy is a messenger, when a goy is watching over something, you left him at home, there's a concern that maybe he switched things around. Over there it makes a difference whether you're Yoitze B'nichnas, a famous concept in Hashgacha, Yoitze B'nichnas. If the Jew is always coming in and out, the goy is afraid. If you tell the goy, I'll see you tomorrow, I won't be around the rest of the day. Well, that could be a problem. That could pose a problem in certain situations, unless there's locks and seals. And that is why we have to have those seals.
Video.
Yes, remote videos. Yes, the cameras are all over there. So otherwise there are certain concerns at certain times. So depending on what we're talking about, sometimes you can rely on the goy, and sometimes you can't. That's pretty much the question over here. And here too, it all depends on the circumstances, as the Shach explains, that it's only really an issue if there's some benefit for the goy to do that. Otherwise, he wouldn't want to be machshel stam intentionally.
Since there's historic,
Yes. Okay.
Then why don't we say that he would want to wreck the mikveh?
I don't think you would work with such an Esau, right? If you suspected that. Yeah. You talk about if you're living in Mississippi? Some state. Yeah. Lechatchila we don't suspect unless there's reason to suspect. But we'll see. We'll see that here it's a little bit better. There's a reason why here we're a little bit safer. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. The Shach says that from the Chaber and from the Ramah, it's mashma that they were matir when, at the very least, you have 21 sa'ah of mekeh shamim, kosher water. Except that the reason why each of them is matir is different. Why is the Mechaber matir Elam Kin Yesh b'mikveh chof alef sa'ah? And why is the Ramah matir? For different reasons. The Shuchan Aruch, even though it doesn't say it here, it's mashma that he's matir because we're talking about in a situation where he could not possibly, he does not have the key, for example, bring in water she'uvim the regular way. The only way he could throw in water she'uvim is through hamshacha, which is why I explained to you what hamshacha is. Well, somehow the waters would get into the mikveh, but dripping down from somewhere, coming down from somewhere, which would make it a kosher hamshacha according to the Mechaber, who describes hamshacha later on. The Ramah wouldn't say that. The Ramah is not going to say that it's because of hamshacha, because he doesn't hold that you can do that kind of hamshacha that the Mechaber allows for through roofs. And according to the Mechaber, this hamshacha would not ruin it. On the contrary, it would be a good hamshacha. The Rosh, I think, also holds like that. So when you have at least 21 sa'ah, what you have here is the majority of the mikveh is kosher water. Plus you have hamshacha. You have both. You have what's called reviyah and hamshacha. Reviyah meaning you have the majority of the water being mayim, not she'uvim, and you have hamshacha, which is fine in this kind of a situation. And the Ramah, who would not agree with this kind of hamshacha unless it's on the ground, his only leniency over here will be that it's a sveika d'Rabbanan. So let's look at it inside. So according to the Mechaber, we said that you don't believe the Oivik Kochavim unless you have 21 sa'ah in the mikveh at all times. So the Ramah says, the me'achar derubai kosher, since most of it is kosher, sveika lekula. Then any suffix legabe the rest, if something happened, is sveika lekula. I'm just going to read the rest of the Ramah. Mikveh shehoysa chaser lefonenu u'ba'u motzah milah. Let's say mikveh was missing water, and all of a sudden you come back the next day you find it full. V'lo yadanu mi milah oysa. We don't know who filled it. The oysa kvar ruba behechsher. If most of it was already ruba behechsher, you had at least 21 se'in. Azina lekula, you go lekula. If you didn't have the majority behechsher, the hachshavika sveka, then you have a seka d'oraisa. If the concern is that Oivik Kochavim filled it up to wash himself, then it's psula. If there's no such concern that Oivik Kochavim filled it up, the Vada Yisrael Milah, but most likely a Jew filled it up. In order to be toivel in it, then it's kshera. Why? The Roiv HaMitzuyim etzel mikveh, most of the people involved in the mikveh, managing the mikveh, taking care of the mikveh, v'oisun kedei le'achshira, and they are involved in making sure it's kosher, then they are beki in him. They're boki with the halacha, so the Vada Be'echsher Milah, obviously they did it in a kosher way. Obviously, the more so if the Jew is in front of us, and he tells us that he filled it up properly, the Ne'eman, he is believed. Why? Since it's within his ability to do it properly, correctly. And on this kind of situations, the halacha says, "Ki gavna eid echot neman b'isurin." Famous rule that one aid can be trusted. One. Usually you need 2 witnesses. Eid echot you can trust when it comes to isurin. Was this done right or not? Is a situation of an isur, as is discussed in Siman Kuf Chav Zayin. Ve'ayin od lekamon soif asinim b'din safek she'ubim. Okay.
Even though he maybe have a vested interest.
Yes, Eid Echad Neman B'Yisur. He's Jewish. He's an aid.
No.
Yeah.
He's an aid as to what he did.
Yes, it's b'yodoi. It's in his hands. Why should he do it wrong when he knows the halachas? He can do it properly. There's no reason to doubt him.
So we don't suspect that he would take the easy way out.
No, not by a Jew. Yeah. So from the Mechaber we didn't see clearly what his reasoning was, but the Shach is the one that explains that it could have happened through Amshacha only. And therefore, there's no reason to be concerned, as long as you have the 21 seed. Whereas the Ramah had to come on to Safek Rabbanan Lekula, because he wouldn't agree with any Amshacha over here. That it's a Safek Rabbanan. But the Taz has a problem with this. How could you say Safek Rabbanan Lekula here, if there's a real concern that this Goy changed the water? You can't say Safek Rabbanan Lekula when there's a Reusa. There's a Reusa. Reusa means that there's something not right over here. The potential exists where the Goy did, in fact, change the water. So this is a good point that the Taz makes, and even the Shach caught on to that. And he says, don't think that the Mechaber could have easily said Safek Rabbanan Lekula too. Because, especially if he's the one that holds that if most of the water is okay, then the whole thing is midirabanan. Kula shov is midirabanan either. So the Shach also talks about this and says that the Mechaber was not making of Safek Rabbanan, and he would have had to come on to another explanation. That is why the Hamshacha possibility is acceptable. Otherwise, the Mechaber would have said, no, but he would not want to say that, because you cannot be makel on that when there's a reusa. The Goy perhaps wanted to clean the mikveh, he could have easily switched the water. So in such a situation when you have a reusa, you have reason to believe good reason to believe that this could have happened, then you don't say Safek Rabbanan Lekula here. And the Ramah, even though he says Safek Rabbanan Lekula, doesn't seem to be concerned by that. That's why the Taz has here a question about this. He's choylek. He says that should not really be the reason. Okay. After you have your 21 saw, apparently it's not so much of an issue. Okay, let's just quickly go to Sif Hay. In Sif Hay, we have a very interesting situation where somebody is dipping in the ocean. What's the din of ocean? So if you look at the Mishnah Mikvaot, you'll have 3 opinions about oceans, about big bodies of water. And even though it's called mikveh, the ocean is called a mikveh, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi there in the Mishnah that it's also metar b'zoichlin. In other words, even though it's not exactly zoichlin, but even though it's like zoichlin, it's okay.
Zoichlin is again moving.
Moving waters, yeah. So the ocean is in some ways like a mayan, in some ways. So I'm going to read it inside first. Kol hayamim yeshlam din mayan letar v'schila. All the oceans, and that's also a question. Is it really all the oceans, or is it just the Pacific Ocean, the big oceans? Here he says all the oceans have a din mayan, that they are also metar, can be metar b'schila. The water moving. But it's not exactly zoichelin. But it's metar b'schila. Hilkach, therefore, if one is in the water, gal shenitlash me'ayam, a wave got disconnected from the ocean, came up and fell on him. Ubo memso, and that wave has 40 se'o. The nopal al adam, and it fell on the man. or the kelim, also lahem tefillah. The tefillah counts. אבל אם הטביל בגל, כשהוא באוויר, if he immersed in the gal when it's in the air, and it hasn't come down yet, it's a little bit difficult to do. So I don't think he's talking about himself. He would be hitbil a keli in the gal when it's in the air, before it comes down to the ground. Even though it has memso, or shezora kelim memsa gal. See here he says zora kelim. So the first part is talking about somehow he immersed himself in the gal. In the second part he says, or he threw kelim in the middle of the gal. Shu also kippah, it's like a kippah, like an arch. Lo also lahem tefillah, in all these kinds of situations when the waters did not yet land, the tefillah does not count.
But the water in that arch,
right,
that wave, generally is connected to the ocean itself.
Yes.
No, we're talking about it's not.
So we're talking here with a situation where the water is completely disconnected or just arched up from the surface.
So that's part of the problem, or part of the questions here, as to what's going on over here. What's the status, or what is the din of a gal? Does a gal become disconnected? Is it part of the ocean? It's moving. So that is exactly what's being discussed. So the Rash brings down that the reason why oceans are metayer b'zoichlin is, first of all, why is it, if we call an ocean a mikveh, then why would it be metayer b'zoichlin if it's not really a mayim? This is because all the rivers eventually go back to the ocean. So all the mayonos, all the springs are eventually coming back to the yam. So therefore, it's also metayer b'zoichlin. And this again is according to the way we pass in Rabbi Yossi, who says that the oceans can be metayer b'zoichlin. According to the Mayor of Yehuda, no. But that's the way that we pass it. But what is this gal shenitlash? How is this any different?
What's nitlash?
Nitlash got disconnected. Talush. Separated, yeah. Gal shenitlash, the Rosh explains that it still has a din of zoichalin, that it's metayer, only because we hold like Rabbi Yossi. In other words, we hold like Rabbi Yossi, and therefore the gal continues to be zoichalin. That's all he says. The Raavad says that the Mishnah can also be going according to the other man de'omar, that this is that the ocean is a mikveh, and we are still metayer b'zoichlin. How? Because we're talking about a situation where the man is standing or sitting, whatever, in the ocean, where the waters are standing, not moving around. Simple. The mokom hashboiren. So he says that this could even go according to that man de'omar.
But he's not talking about the gal nitlash.
What? Yeah, he is. I'm going to talk about it next, yeah. But that's what we're talking about. It could still be going according to the other Madhoma that says it's a mikveh, but because we're talking about...
Right now we're talking about whether zoichel in
ocean, exactly.
In what circumstances can the ocean be metayer?
Yes. Before we talk about the gal.
Right. Moving water.
He says that it could be even according to the Madhoma that holds that this...
Okay.
It's still a mikveh, as long as it's in a place where it's standing still, yeah.
Right. So that's according to the opinion that if the ocean water is moving, it doesn't metayer. It would have to be standing still to be metayer.
Right, but what about the gal?
But
what about the gal? Since the gal is coming back to the same place more or less where it came from, it's disconnecting or separating and coming back to where it left from. That's not called zoichlin. That's not called zchila. Imagine water jumping out of a mikveh, falling back in. It's not a real zechila, where, with a spring, it comes out, it moves, it goes from one place to another. This is not really called zechila. That's how the Raavad explains it. That it could be talking about ashboiren, and as far as the gal's separating or disconnecting, that's not a real zechila.
Did we say that if we what we're saying is that one that disconnect?
Yes, the wave. Mm-hmm.
But did we say that a disconnected wave? Oh, it's a wave.
It's a wave. Oh, sure.
Not a disconnected.
A disconnected wave, yeah.
Because didn't we say that a disconnected wave is not metayer?
That we only said ba'avir, as long as it did not come back down.
Now we're talking about
when it came back down. Yeah, yeah.
After it came back
down. We're not
talking about in the
air, no more. No. Yeah.
So why would we call it disconnected when it came already back down?
Because it came out. It got disconnected, right? And it fell back down. Now it's back down, right? So it's not schila. It's not schila.
So why would we have a problem with that?
It looks like schila, doesn't it? Disconnected water is coming out.
So that will be
moving.
So that will be according to the one that says that ocean water cannot be matar if it's moving. But according to the one that says that ocean water is matar.
Oh, then there's no problem.
Then once the wave rejoins the body of the ocean, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Yes, according to this,
so
according to the writer.
Now we're talking only according to the one who says that that ocean water at the time it's moving cannot be matar. We're talking about the waves that reconnect.
Only the waves that reconnect, again, correctly. Yeah.
So when we're talking about ocean water moving, are we talking about tides? Are we talking about current? Are we talking about undertow? What exactly are we talking about? We're talking about the waters moving and being soft.
In general, the ocean water is like what you said, the tides and the currents.
Because you go far enough out, the tides are not affected.
Right. But then you only have the possibility of a gal coming at you.
Right. If you go out off a boat, you don't have any of these issues.
Pretty much, yeah. Not as much, yeah. But you need to know how to swim. All right, the only question left here is then, okay, if we can use the ocean and we can use the gal, not the one in the air, but coming back down, why do you need 40 se'ah? If it's like a mayan, that it's metar, then why require 40 se'ah if a mayan is metar b'chol shu? So Rabbeinu Tam says, you see, from here we learn that you need 40 se'ah for Tevilas Adam. In Ochinami, if it would be Kalim, since it's a Mayan, it would be Bechol Shu. But we see that you need, for Tevilas Adam, nonetheless, even if it's a Mayan, 40 se'ah. But the Taz says over here that even according to the one that holds that a Mayan is Matar Bechol Shu, even for an Adam, you still need a certain amount of water for the Adam to cover himself completely. In that shear, we said is Amal Berum Gimel Amos, and that amount of water is pretty much 40 se'ah. So that's where the 40 se'ah is coming from, because ultimately you need to cover up the man. And that's not that is the requirement of a Mayan. Because even for an Adam it should be enough. Not like Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says, you see, even for an Adam you need Arboin Salt. Not necessarily, but you do need 40 se'ah to cover the man. And that's where the 40 se'ah, according to other opinions, comes from. Rabbit says that the Mishnah is going according to the ones that hold that the Yam is considered like a mikveh. And since it's like a mikveh, therefore Adam and Kalim require 40 se'ah. That's the Rabbit. But why isn't a gal nitlash pasul litval boy because of Zoichlin? So the explanation was, as we said, that that's not a real zechila. Since it's coming out of the mokom mashbor, it is coming out from a place that is mashbor, a place that is like a mikveh. So that would not become a form of zechila. Now the Shach here explains that even though the gal that's nitlash has a similar din to a mayan in the tar bezoichlin, because that's what nitlash appears to be, but he makes some sort of a compromise. Just because it appears like zoichlin and may have the din of mayan to be mitar bezoichlin, we call mokom, he doesn't have the din of a mayan to be mitar bechol shu. He has a din of a mikvah, which requires 40 se'ah.
So it's a hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid. That's what the Shach says. That a gal has a different kind of a din. Why does it have a different kind of a din? Because a gal is nitlash and it's no longer mechuber lemayan. He says it's no longer connected to the mayan. It can't be like a real mayan. So somehow everything is okay that there is some sort of zechila. If you hold it, this is zechila, but it's not enough of a zechila to render this a mayan that it's mitar v'choshu. That is why you need 40 se'ah. So the Chazon Ish I saw explains over here in the Shach that this gal resembles the Mayim in Zechila because of the movements that you were saying, the currents. So it does have some resemblance to a Mayim. But it loses that resemblance once it's nitlash, because it's no longer connected to a Mayim. And therefore, we would require 40 se'ah. Okay, so the next time you go to the ocean, just make sure that the wave has 40 se'ah. Or don't immerse in the wave. Immerse in the water wherever it's safe, of course, where there's an ishboiren. If you want to, immerse yourself in an area where there's no chashash of zechlin. But either way, we're not machmir. Even if there's what you would call some zechlin, we hold like Rabbi Yossi that the mayim of a yam, of any ocean, is metar the zechlin as well. But
the oceans clearly have more than 40 se'ah, and they're all interconnected.
Well, obviously the whole ocean, body of ocean, yeah.
So we're talking about smaller bodies of water?
Well, you have lakes, you have all kinds of seas. These are not rivers.
Not rivers, we're talking about seas. So
Yeah.
Same basic rules in law.
Yeah, so we poskin that all the seas are pretty much the same. That even though they're called mikvot, they are mitar bezoichlin as well. The only question would be with a gal. But if the gal came back down, and the gal had 40 se'ah, and that's where you were toiveled in, then that's fine. Otherwise, wherever you are, you want to make sure that there's 40 se'ah. Obviously, I think anywhere in the ocean, if your complete body is covered, would be just fine. Okay, we'll stop over here.